Hi, I am so excited to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking about designing your space for your element. We're going to talk about why you'd want to do this, what are the benefits for it, and four major benefits of why you might want to think about doing it for you and your spaces. But first, before I go on, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kendra Gardner. I'm an architect, designer, and feng shui expert, and I'm the founder of Energetic Spaces. And at Energetic Spaces, we design spaces that integrate feng shui and other healing modalities into the design process. And one of the things we actually love to do a lot at Energetic Spaces is think about your element and how to infuse this information into the design process, how to think about the finishes, et cetera, to make it so that your space supports you. And the reason why I find this interesting and kind of important for people to know or to think about when you are designing your space is that we use the elements all the time in feng shui. No matter what school you might have studied, you do know about the elements. There's certain things like the water element that have a lot to do with the career, your path, connections, and we would play with using the water element, especially in your office, or you're talking about getting things to your home because it's all about the path. When you're talking about you needing a promotion or you're an artist who wants to get seen, we talk about the fire element and how to integrate that more maybe in your space and into your life so that you can kind of get the promotion, get the big job, get the big gallery gig, just trying to get yourself out there in promotion. So that would be some time when you really want to focus on the fire element. Now, these things are all important and things you use, but one of the things that I think people kind of forget about is just generally in your space, think about using your element. You want a space that's balanced and feels good and has the elements in it, but if you can start thinking about how to use your element in your space, you can kind of take it to the next level. I had a client where she had her space designed to suit her. She had all of her elements, set up so it was supporting her, but her husband, who was living with her, moved into her house when they got married. The space wasn't supporting him. And the thing that was kind of interesting to see is he never was home. The space was lovely, looked beautiful, blah, 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 but it didn't support him energetically. So he actually avoided being there. Like if he was going to watch the game, he went to a bar. It wasn't because her house was too girly. It actually because the energy didn't really match him. He found it more draining than nurturing. So he wanted to leave it. He didn't want to be there. It actually exhausted him. And it's something you should think about because maybe something's not right about your place isn't because it's not aesthetically gorgeous or things aren't connecting. Maybe your element's not there, or the elements that support your element aren't there to give you the nurturing, and that you're feeling a little drained because it's just a little off. Well, in this video, we're going to talk more about that so you can think about how you can integrate this into your space and into your designs. So as I mentioned before, at Energetic Spaces, we're very big on having energy infused in the design process. We think more about how the space not just aesthetically supports you, but spiritually and energetically supports you so that you can really have a holistic design that brings it in. And one of the ways I love to think about it or do this for my clients is I start thinking about how I would design their space with their element in mind. So thinking about, this person's element, their fundamental elements, and okay, so not just does this room maybe need water because we're talking about career, but I also know this person's elements. So I'm going to try to play with these elements too together so that we can create a space that nurtures them. So in feng shui, there are 5 elements that we always talk about, not like in the Western thing about 4, but there's 5 elements, which is water, earth, wood, fire, and metal. And not only are these elements obviously out in nature and then different things represent each element, but also everybody actually has these as their element. So when you do your 9-star key astrology, you will find out what your element is. This is, of course, based on the year in which you were born, and that's when you find out your principal element. Or if you decide to do it with the Chinese astrology and you find out it's also based on the year you're born, but also Chinese astrology, you talk about the animal, but it also has an element that links back to it. But when you focus on getting your feng shui analysis and using the information about what your element is, we can try to take that stuff to the next level and think about how to use that information in your design process or in the design and in the finishes and trying to bring it all together, as I said, in a holistic process. We might select different finishes based on what your element is. So maybe you want more water, you more want earthen materials, you want more metallic materials, whatever your element is or whatever supports your element, you can think about it that way and how to bring it and incorporate it into your space so that you have these things there to support and nurture you in your spaces. So I think I kind of hinted to why you should design your space for your element. So when I was actually doing this and I was doing a 9-star key astrology analysis for somebody, and I was going through what would be best for them, what would go well in their space, it was very fascinating. Kind of like the person I mentioned earlier or I've mentioned before about her space was perfect for her. Her husband came in, it wasn't, his element was not being supported there. He didn't want to spend time there. This person during the feng shui analysis, when I was showing her examples of what she shouldn't have, she's like, I lived in a space like that for years. And, by the end of it, I never was there. I was avoiding it. I was traveling. I was just not there. I was always going out on purpose. I just didn't want to be home. But it's like, yep, you weren't being nurtured in your space. So you were kind of avoiding your space. Despite it being beautiful, you're going to kind of leave it. So you need to kind of be conscious, in my mind, of what your element is. Think about it in your space. Because the key thing is you want a space that supports you. You want it to literally have hands around you holding you in place, as opposed to a place that drains you so that you energetically feel worn out. You want your space to always support you. So if you think about it, the elements actually do play that kind of relationship on us in our spaces. So think about when you're doing your space. So for example, you might have a beautiful space that's featured in magazines, gorgeous space that is all the water element, which is lovely. But if you so happen to be a fire person in that space, you're not going to love that space the same way. You might be able to appreciate the aesthetics, you might be appreciate how beautiful it is, but you'll find that space very draining because it's putting out your fire, it's zapping your energy. So it's not going to be a space that nourishes you. So for example, with this John Doe, we'll say John Doe's principal element is 4 wood. And so now we know he's a 4 wood. We also know lots of interesting things about his personality and cool things that go with 4 woods. But now we also know his principal element, and probably after feng shui analysis, the other elements too. We can start diving into his space and figuring out what we should think about when designing it or factoring in things that would support him. So for example, what would support a wood person, right? So if you think about wood or a plant, easy peasy, think of a plant, it would love water. Water would nurture a wood person. So you would think about a space that was very watery. So maybe that blue, living room is what the person would actually really feel good in because they're being nurtured in that space, as opposed to what you would think about to avoid putting a lot in their space. And what would drain wood, of course, would be fire. Fire is fueled by wood. It is going to zap all of that energy. Other than the obvious reasons why I'm really big on thinking about your elements when you're designing your space and designing it so that you have your elements supported in your space, I'm going to kind of talk about 4 really simple, big reasons why you should think about designing your space or living in your element. So the first one is what I kind of alluded to when I talked about the other people. You'll want to spend more time there. And it's always good that you enjoy your space. I mean, you can imagine if you have a home, you want to be there. But also if you like your office, you don't mind being there. You'll put in more work. You'll just become more productive because you're in a space that nurtures and fosters the great ideas. It just kind of keeps growing. It's a wonderful space and you will actually appreciate it and want to be there. The other reason, and I always think about it, if your bedroom was designed with your element in mind, can you imagine how nurtured and supported you were when you were sleeping, and you would wake up refreshed. You'll just feel so refreshed because you're in a space that is nurturing you. So of course, as being in your element, thinking about your element design helps you be more refreshed. And if all this idea is, if you were more refreshed, you are probably functioning at your ultimate level, which is wonderful. It's something you kind of don't think about it, but if your space is supporting you, you're functioning at your ultimate level. If your office is designed to support you energetically and has that thought in mind, you're so much more productive. If you've done everything that makes it work, not just put your desk in command position, but have the elements that support your career, have the elements that support you, you're a powerhouse. And what that happens next when you are a powerhouse, it is so much easier to manifest anything you want. When your energy is set high, you are just calling in everything, everything's energy and you're calling in the best things towards you because you are in a space that supports you so you can do more with it. And maybe when you're there, you can easily call in your soulmate. You can easily call in clients. You can easily call in the next house, the next apartment, your summer home, whatever next big thing you want is easier to manifest when you're in a space that supports you when you're functioning at your ultimate level. So I invite you to think about designing your space for your element. Think about how this could really be a game changer. If you already have a space that's wonderful, maybe you'll think about adding a couple things that actually support your element, that nurture your element, and see if you notice the difference, if you kind of notice how it kind of adds to the space, or it kind of gives you a little something. Or maybe you'll even notice the things in the space that you really appreciate are the things that are already nurturing you. And if you want to know more about your element and want some help trying to figure this out, please come to us. We do discovery calls where in a 15-minute we can talk about what your element is and how to think about using it in your space. You can always go online and look it up too. I'm not saying that isn't a possibility. Or if you want a deep dive and find out more about what your element is, do a 9-star key astrology analysis. And then you can find out what your element is, more about who you are, and then more about the spaces and the palettes that actually would really support and nurture you and all the things you want to do. So thank you again for listening, learning a little bit about designing your element, kind of getting a sneak peek of kind of the things we think about a lot of energetic spaces. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video.